So in this movie, Lucy, who was a ticket booth person, living this single life, going home to her cat, feeling alone, feeling invisible in the world, feeling left out, she was craving a family. And so when she meets Peter, I don't know if meet's the right word, when she saves Peter, she gets enveloped into this family, and this was what she was missing. Being part of this family where they just have this conversation, they just have this relaxed just way of life. They invite her for Christmas, they give her presents, and that was what she was looking for. And Hallmark tries to tell us that you find love or you find this family and suddenly all the problems are solved. And it is hard. Holidays are really hard when you don't have that. When you don't have a family that you belong to, or maybe even you have a family and you're just sitting there and feeling invisible because you're left out. Like I dated a guy years ago, and his family would sit around and tell stories, and I was like, oh, it's story time. So I try to tell a story, and they'd all look at me like, why are you talking? We don't know your story. And so I felt really invisible because I'm sitting there, part of this family, but not really. So even some of us have a family to sit with, but we still don't feel like we belong. It's hard to feel like you don't belong anywhere. It's hard to feel like you don't fit. It's hard to have a holiday that you don't look forward to. Like being lonely is hard. For whatever reason, you're lonely. Whether it's because you're physically alone or because you're in a relationship and you feel lonely. But it's hard. But when you have a day-to-day, like for me, I go to work, come home, and I do all my stuff. So I don't actually feel the loneliness until I go to bed. I can put that out of my mind until I lay down and really have time to just think about my life. And that's when it hits me. But the holidays disrupt that because they disrupt our schedule. And there's all this hype about being part of something, being part of a family, being part of a couple, being part of something. And so it's really challenging. We have to recognize there are people around us who for them, holidays suck. They really stink. And so what is the answer to that? As a church, we're supposed to be a family, right? And I think I look to Jesus and I'm like, what did that look like in the Bible? When I have a problem, I look at the Bible. What does the Bible have to say about that? Well, there are single, lonely people in the Bible. And I'm going to talk about one specific person in the Bible today who really stands out to me. If any of you have watched the series, The Chosen, if you haven't, do yourself a favor, find a way to watch The Chosen. It's so good. It's cinema about Christianity that's good. A lot of the old Christian shows were pretty cheesy and kitschy, but The Chosen is so well done, and they are very researched, and they really try to stick to the true meaning of the Bible. They don't try to go off and add extra stuff. And one of the people in the Bible, and the way they portray him in The Chosen, is Matthew. Matthew was one of the disciples of Jesus, and Matthew also worked in a booth. Just like Lucy worked in that ticket booth all by herself, Matthew worked in a booth all by himself. His family wasn't around him. The religious people hated him. He didn't really belong with the Romans. He was all alone. And in The Chosen, they portray him as someone with Asperger's, someone on the spectrum. The Bible does not say that he was on the spectrum, but if you look at the clues, you can get an idea that he was pretty lonely, and he has some gifts that may have lent themselves to The Chosen portraying him as someone who's on the spectrum. Here in Matthew 9, this is when he has just been called. It says, when Jesus was leaving, he saw a man named Matthew sitting in a place for collecting taxes. I think of this as a booth. And in The Chosen show, they show it as a booth. He sits in because the money's in there and they can lock him in so no one can steal the money. He's sitting in a booth collecting taxes. And Jesus said, follow me. And so he got up and he followed Jesus. Jesus ate dinner at Matthew's house. Many tax collectors and others with bad reputations came and ate with him and his followers. The Pharisees saw that Jesus was eating with these people, and they asked his followers, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and other sinners? And Jesus heard them say this. So he said to them, it's the sick people who need a doctor, not those who are healthy. You need to go learn what Scripture means. You judgmental people, why don't you actually read the Scripture? He says, I don't want animal sacrifices. I want you to show kindness to people. I did not come to invite good people. I came to invite the sinners. And so there's a lot of clues here that kind of justify the way The Chosen have portrayed Matthew. He's a tax collector, which means he worked for Rome, and he was Jewish. So a Jewish person working for Rome was considered a traitor. And therefore because the Pharisees are like, why are you eating with him? The Pharisees, the Jews, the religious leaders were like, ew, he's a terrible person. Notice who came to dinner, his work friends. Notice it didn't say his family came to dinner. He didn't invite his family. Why didn't he invite his family? Did he not have family? Or does he have family and they won't talk to him? In the series The Chosen, it shows that relationship. And because he became a tax collector and was considered a traitor, his dad kicked him out of the family. He was not welcome at home. He was rich. He's rich enough to throw a big party, an impromptu big party. And so the fact that he's Jewish and he's rich means that the Jewish people probably all hated him. And the Romans, he wasn't a Roman, so they were like, you're not one of us. So here's Matthew, all by himself, like Lucy, sitting in his booth day after day. In The Chosen, they show him going home to his dog instead of a cat. But he goes home and the only company he has is his pet. Much like Lucy. And then Jesus comes and says, hey, why don't you get out of that booth and come follow me? And he gets right up and he goes. And then because you want to say like, oh, he found Jesus and everything was great. But as The Chosen goes on, you see that the disciples did not like Matthew. They were like, you're a traitor. How could you do that? Why would you do that to your people? And so even though he becomes a part of the group, he still doesn't fit in. So you might be part of a group and still feel like you don't fit in. You might be part of a family, but still feel like you don't fit into that family. But Jesus always talked to Matthew. In fact, a lot of times Jesus would take Matthew, because Matthew was a tax collector. We know that he was very smart and good with money. And so in The Chosen, it shows that he's kind of like Jesus' scribe. He's the one that takes the notes for Jesus. He's writing down all these things. And we know that he did this because we have the Gospels. So Matthew followed Jesus around, kind of like a documentary crew, following Jesus around to write down all that Jesus said and did so that it was saved for history. And so we know that Jesus loved Matthew because Jesus said, come follow me. And that, for those of us who are single, that is part of the answer. Part of the answer is to remember Jesus is always right here with me, right next to me. He is wherever you are. Whether you're home by yourself or in the car or walking, or if you're in a room full of people and you still feel alone, he is always right there with you. And he wants you to follow him. He wants you to be part of his crew. Jesus had a tribe. He had his crew. He had his dudes and women. There were some women there too. And wherever he went, they went with him. Matthew became part of that crew. He became a part of the disciples. Matthew is one of the 12 disciples. He belonged to that group of people because he followed Jesus. When we follow Jesus, we become a part of the tribe of Jesus. Those of us in this room, we are a tribe. We're a family together of Jesus, and we don't always come together in that way. And maybe we need to get better at coming together as a family, because that's what we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be people who just show up to check the box and get our one little dose of feel-good for the week. We're supposed to be a family who helps each other, who works together, who takes care of each other. That's what we're supposed to be as Christians. And Jesus came for those of us who were poor in spirit. Jesus came for those who were down in the dumps. He said, I didn't come for the healthy, I came for the sick. He says, I came for the lost sheep of Israel. He said, I came to lift up those who are sad. And when I love that Matthew wrote this down. And in The Chosen, when Jesus is giving the speech, you can see they show Matthew, the actor, they show how he's being affected because he realizes Jesus is talking about him. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you who mourn, for you will be comforted. Some people are single because we're mourning. And Jesus says, when you're with me, I will bring you comfort. He says, blessed are the meek. You guys are going to inherit the world. Jesus came for the sick. Jesus came for the hurting. Jesus came to be with us, Emmanuel, God with us, so that we don't have to feel alone. so we don't have to feel invisible, so we can belong to something. He wants to be a part of our life together. I'm trying to read my notes without my glasses on. And we are a family. Jesus also came to redefine what family looks like. You know, it's easy to say family is for me, it's my mom and dad, my brother, my sister, my nieces. But Jesus came to change that because not everybody has that luxury of having that nuclear family still intact. And he came to redefine what family can look like. There's a scene he's teaching and it's crowded, it's packed. And his mom and his brothers were outside trying to get in and they couldn't get in, it was so crowded. And they're like, Jesus, we're here, tell them to let us in. And so he says, they're like, Jesus, your mom's outside. He's like, who's my mom? Who are my brothers? He pointed to his disciples, his tribe, his people that he chose, who chose to follow him. He said, here are my brothers, my mother, and my brothers. Whoever does the will of my Father is my brother, my sister, my mother. When you say yes to Jesus, you become a part of the family of Jesus. You become a part of that tribe. You were part of that tribe when you say you're going to follow Jesus. And as people who say yes to Jesus, we call ourselves Christians. Christian means little Christ. It means mini Christ, one who is Christ-like. What did Jesus do? Did Jesus sit in a temple and expect everyone to come see him? No, Jesus got out there and he found his tribe. Jesus got out there and he invited people to come hang out with him. Jesus went to the booth and said, Matthew, come out of that booth. Come out of your loneliness and come be a part of my tribe. And so Jesus is showing us another answer. In addition to following Jesus, we then should be a people who are inviting others to be a part of our tribe. Family doesn't have to be your biological parents, your biological siblings, your biological children. Family can be the people you hang out with. For Jesus, his family were the people he hung out with. Jesus didn't sit in his booth waiting for them to come to him. He went out and he pulled people out of their lonely booths and said, come and be a part of my life. And that is another one of the answers for us. If you're feeling isolated and alone, you've got to be brave enough to find a tribe. You've got to be brave enough to find friends to hang out with. To say, hey, let's get dinner. Hey, let's go to a movie. Hey, let's get coffee. Let's go for a walk. Come, let's get together. Let's be friends. But you can't do that. Don't be that person I always get mad when people are like, I'm single, I'm so tired of being single, and then they just sit in their house all day. Well, of course. How are you ever going to not be single if all you do is sit? Well, nowadays there's online dating, but back in the day when I was thinking that people you got to get out, and my aunt's always, you got to join what'd she say? I always had to join. She said, you got to join a co-op. You need to join a co-op, and that's where you'll find your husband. We got to go out and find your tribe. Find even just one person who can be the start of that. Jesus started with just one or two people. And eventually, they started to gather. They got to a point where I felt like they're the Pied Piper, hundreds of people following him. And then he got a bunch of people following him. He'd throw down the gauntlet and a bunch would leave. And then his 12 would be like, we're not leaving you. But Jesus went out and he asked other people to be a part of his family. And so that is part of the answer, and that is part of your dare. I dare you this month to find your tribe if you don't already have one. Find your group, your gang of people, your ride or dies. Some of us in this room have a ride or die, that best friend who you can go to for all things. So I want you to identify someone in your life who might feel lonely this season and invite them to coffee, dinner, holiday event, something. Identify people in your life who you want to be friends with. Ask God to help you see who those people are. And be like, hey, let's get coffee. Hey, you want to come hang out? I'll make dinner. Let's go wine tasting. Whatever it is that you like to do. Go get out of your booth and go find someone. Ask Jesus to show you someone who might need that connection and give you the courage to reach out to them. You can either read Luke 5 or Matthew 12. And how did Jesus create his tribe? How did Jesus create that atmosphere among his people? And to engage, host or organize a small gathering of friends, neighbors, coworkers. Take that first step to build a tribe. Look around you. Are there people around you who maybe feel left out, who don't have their own tribe? If you have a tribe, is there one or two people you can add to your tribe who are left out? Is there someone you can include so that they aren't left out anymore? Our job as Christians is to get out of the booth and follow Jesus. And once we're out of the booth, to be on the lookout for other people to join our tribe. And all of God's children said, Amen.